Hello and welcome to another episode of What's on the Pile. I'm Nathan Besner, and joining me is Shane Lee,
Hey, hello.
Matt Wagner,
With such sights to show you.
and Jenner.
Jenner here.
In celebration of the entire month that is basically Halloween, we're having a Clive Barker night. Later on, we'll be discussing the newest Hellraiser movie titled Hellraiser, or Hulu Raiser, because that's where you'll find it. Before we check that out, we'll be discussing Barker's work in general, along with the Hellraiser series of films. Clive Barker is a prolific artist ranging from film direction to novels to video games and toys. He's most widely known for creating the Hellraiser series based on his novella The Hellbound Heart. There's a lot to talk about with Barker, so why don't we start with the basics? Is everyone caught up on the Hellraiser films?
Yeah.
I've
Yes.
seen all the Doug Bradley ones. None
Okay.
of the other ones.
Just not
And the
Judgment?
new one. Yeah, is that the only one?
And-
Revelations and Judgment.
Oh, was it Revelations as well?
Revelations is freaking horrible. I will
That's
get that out of the way directly. That is
Yeah.
probably the worst franchise horror movie I've ever seen.
Really?
Judgment is actually pretty good.
I mean, because
I
some of the
think.
later ones. What's the one before Hell World?
Deader.
That one was
Deader.
pretty bad from what I remember. I don't
Yeah,
even remember what
liked
it's about.
Deader.
It-
Deader was a competing cult that had another way of preserving life after death, and that runs afoul of Hellraiser, and was very plainly a completely different script that had Hellraiser grafted
I mean,
onto it.
weren't there a bunch
presumably a
of those?
vampire movie.
Because
Yeah.
There were
weren't
two
there,
of those.
there were two movies about just corrupt cops that then ran afoul of Pinhead at the end, right? There's one with Dean Winters and one with another guy.
Craig Sheffer, the
Yeah,
Inferno?
Craig Shepard. Weren't they
yeah,
both? Were those all
Inferno-
Hellraiser movies to begin with?
Inferno was originally written as a Hellraiser movie. Inferno was originally supposed to be the fifth theatrical release, but it ended up going direct to video, and they never looked back. Technically, there are three Hellraiser movies about corrupt cops running afoul of Pinhead, because Judgment has that aspect as well.
That's right, I
yeah.
forgot that.
Yeah,
I watched all of them in 1 week.
yeah,
I mean, I'd seen 1 and 2 before, but then I decided to sit down and watch. This was like 5 years ago. Decided in
Mhm.
1 week to watch all. I think it was 8 of them. All the
Yeah.
Bradley ones.
If it got through Hellworld, there were 8 of them.
Yeah, so I watched all 8 of them in a week, which was
Yeah.
interesting. They all
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of blend together. I'll admit, other than 1 and 2, I've only seen all the rest of them once, and I watched all those in a row. So I remember 4 was in space with Adam Scott.
Mhm.
He was in that.
part
and
part
then-
of it was in space.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
And in the
mostly I don't
past.
remember.
The Hellraiser 4 follows the precept that every horror franchise eventually has to either go back in time or into space, so it decided to do both.
I like that movie.
I do too. There are flaws.
I liked
there are flaws
Hellworld
to
a
it, but
lot.
I love it.
I actually liked Hellworld fairly well as well, although it had no business being a Hellraiser movie.
I actually think Deader is the funniest of them, but I don't know if you remember this, but the bit where the woman wakes up and there's a knife embedded in her back and she only realizes it because there's a tiny little point coming out of her chest, and the next 15 minutes are her trying to figure out how to get the damn thing out of her back. But she eventually jams into a door frame to slowly extract it. But
I
it
honestly-
doesn't hurt.
I honestly
Late-
don't remember anything about that movie except not liking it. But maybe
Late-
it was also maybe fatigue by that point.
Yeah.
It has been forever since I've seen Deader, but basically it struck me that this was originally a vampire screenplay, and it ended up just getting shoehorned into the Hellraiser
So-
mythology.
so
It
Hellraiser-
does have the worst Cenobite.
So like
Go ahead.
Hellraiser was the original Cloverfield. Let's just put Cloverfield in a bunch of random shit. Let's just put Hellraiser in this movie.
Eh. So I mean, only
Was it only?
7 and 8 were actually written as different stories and had
Okay.
Hellraiser grafted onto it. Is that correct? Or was
There is some debate about number 6 that frankly
Okay.
I haven't bothered to investigate, because I've always said that 6 is a better funded, worse scripted remake of 5.
Yeah.
Yes.
it was also not terrible.
It was not terrible, and as you're so fond of recalling, it did finally bring Kirsty back, although she
Mhm.
doesn't behave anything like freaking Kirsty, so I feel confident she was originally written as a different character.
Yes. Yeah.
No, like I say, and after Hellworld, Revelations was, so
Just bad.
fucking bad.
We don't need to go into why it was bad. Just
But
leave that
again,
it was bad.
Judgment, given the Judgment was made for about $275 in Oklahoma,
Mhm.
is actually pretty good. It does some interesting things with the mythology.
It does some interesting things and some things that are just wrong-headed. I still don't think they should have introduced angels into the
No.
Hellraiser mythos. That was a dumb idea, but they
I
appear
like
to have dropped it.
I
so.
like the Judge Cenobite.
Yes.
He was fun.
Wasn't there a CD-ROM Cenobite in part 3?
Yeah, that was CD.
Yeah.
His name was CD.
His name was CD.
Okay.
I think they called him Diskhead or something like that. Is that
The toy was named CD. I don't remember what they credit him.
anyway? Yeah,
credited him.
that one was probably my vote for the goofiest Cenobite ever, and I'm pretty
Yeah.
much not alone in that.
Well, the goofiest Cenobite ever, in my opinion, was in 7. He wasn't seen very much. His name was Spike, and he just had a giant wooden post rammed through the center of his head. There's a reason you don't see very much of him, and nobody remembers him.
It's been a while.
The third one was shot partially here in Charlotte, which I find very amusing because there are not many films that make that claim. It's like that and Nell.
Begging for a crossover.
Was it the movies who started calling it the Lament configuration instead of the Le Machin configuration?
It is never actually referred to in the movies as the Lament configuration until Hellworld, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
Which we'll circle back on that in the second half because that lends itself to something interesting there. But in the meantime, it was always informally referred to outside of the movies as the Lament configuration. But as far as, and amusingly, I never let him live this down. It was Henry Cavill who mispronounced the word lament.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
He had a fun death, though, from what I remember. That's all I really remember of him in Hellworld. I mean, Hellworld had Lance Henriksen, so of course it's going to be somewhat awesome. But I enjoyed it overall.
Yeah, no, it's one of my favorite of the sketchier sequels.
How much Barker has everyone read?
Some.
I discovered Barker at the same time I discovered Stephen King when I was 12. But most of what I've read has not been adapted. Like Weave World was a favorite, and Magica. The Great and Secret Show was actually my very favorite of his. That's an incomplete trilogy, which needs to be finished because it's so good. But yeah, I've read quite a bit of his.
I have a ton of Barker. I've read a few short stories, and I've read The Hellbound Heart, and not a lot else. I've been meaning to set aside time for it.
I've read through Weave World, I think, all of the Books of Blood, Hellbound Heart. I think that's about it. Whichever one had the basis of Nightbreed, Cabal.
Cabal. Yeah.
I don't remember which collection that was in.
Well, it was called Cabal, but at least it was originally supposed to be Books of Blood 6, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I actually had not read Hellbound Heart till this past week. Like Nate, we both read it this past week, right?
Yeah.
Which made for an interesting. I'm not going to jump ahead too much, but I thought the new one was like a remake of the first one. So
turns out it isn't.
Yeah, reading that while going in was a little jarring, but it was cool to finally read the source material. You know, that's one that I'd missed.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I've also I read the Scarlet Gospels, and it's very good.
that was good too.
It's so good.
Because I love Harry D'Amour. He's in the second Book of the Art, the sequel to the Great and Secret Show. Of course, he's in Lord of Illusions, which we can talk about.
It is sick how much Barker I have that I haven't read yet. I've got Books of Blood 1 through 3. I've got book 2 twice, once in the omnibus and once in its original paperback release. I've got the first American edition of the Damnation game. I've got the first paperback edition of Imagica and have had it since college, and my lazy ass still hasn't actually read the damn thing.
I started reading Imagica. So Imagica is an enormous book. In fact, in paperback, they published it as 2 volumes. I got it from the library when I was 12.
That was the reprint. I have the original single volume.
I made it like 200 pages in, and I finally finished it when I was like 30 years old. I think I tried it 2 more times before. It's a great book. It's just it was too big for me when I was 12. Although I did read The Stand when I was 12, but I never finished it. Had to return it. Try it again later in college.
Stephen King has a much more easygoing prose style than Barker does.
Yeah, and Magica takes a long time to get going. There's a lot of characters, and it's not like, with Stephen King, it's like you have all these parallel characters. They're all going to come together, and it's kind of in a very linear way they all come together. And in Magica, it's a very sprawling, complicated story. So I think I was just too young. But when I finished it when I was 30, first of all, I felt very accomplished, But I also really enjoyed it. But that would be a tough one to adapt. That would have to be a multi-season TV series, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More than likely.
I would imagine Weaveworld would as well.
Yeah.
What
I mean,
is Weaveworld about? I've seen the title, but I've never looked into it.
I have read Weaveworld, but I'm going to leave it to Shane. I don't think I can.
It's been again, I read that when I was 13. It's about a world contained within a rug.
Cool.
A magical world, basically like the heroes and the evil forces all trying to get the rug and trying to protect or destroy the world or whatever. But
it's kind of tinged fantasy. It's like Clive Barker ish.
Yeah, it's
almost straight up fantasy.
It's pretty dark fantasy, but yeah,
he does. He refers to himself as a fantasist.
Yeah, he's flirted with lighter stuff by his standards before, like The Thief of Always, which famously was going to be an animated film directed by Bernard Rose, the director of Candyman, but unfortunately that project never came together.
They did manage a comic book adaptation, but I think that's the closest they got.
Yeah, Nate, your wife's a huge fan of that, right? I like that book a lot too.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
That one I think is actually aimed at like teenagers and maybe not children, but it's more of a like it's a little
young
less
adult-ish.
hard edge. Yeah. More of a fable.
Yeah. Dark ass young adult, but young adult-ish. Yeah.
Everything else we've listed is not.
Yeah, very, very much not.
I love Lord of Illusions. I love that movie. I've not read the book. I'd like to because I like the movie so much. I understand the problems. It's fine. So I still like it.
I love especially like the last half of that movie, but Lord of Illusions will always stick in my head as the reason that Clive Barker should not direct straight sex scenes. Because wow, that is the least sexy.
Man, I don't remember
sex scene I can.
scenes.
Yeah, it's just not good. I mean, I realize some people complain about the CGI. Whatever, you take it with a grain of salt.
I mean, that was what, frickin' 95.
Mm-hmm.
CGI was what you could get at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you happened to be ILM, you were off in the weeds, same as everybody else.
Yeah, I was gonna say Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park had already hit the shelves.
But also Mortal Kombat 2 came after those.
That's true.
So not everybody had figured it out yet.
I also remember that movie as starting out with one of the most legitimately terrifying moments. Yeah, until I saw Roar, in which the character is being menaced by an honest-to-God baboon on a chain, which if you know anything about baboons, that is terrifying for everyone involved.
I watched that show on Animal Planet. I think it was on Animal Planet about people who have like exotic pets and they end up killing them.
Yeah, I mean, like a chimpanzee acts like a human being-ish about 80% of the time, and a wild animal who will tear your face off about 20% of the time, and a baboon is the reverse. So
yeah.
It's just an angry creature with very long teeth.
20% civil, 80% fuck you.
Yeah, basically.
I hate Rawhead Rex.
I just saw that 2 days ago for the first time.
I would say I kind of like it for being a low-budget piece of crap, but I don't think I've seen it in 15 years, and I only vaguely remember that it was a very bad-looking monster.
Oh yeah,
and the whole urination
the face doesn't
scene.
move at all. It's got some cool eyes. It's got like LEDs for eyes that move around, but it's
I've seen
it looks it's a piece of plastic, and it
I saw the first 30 minutes on a syndicated TV broadcast way back in the day. Found the tone annoying and turned it off. I've tried twice since then, and I've gotten about 30 minutes in and have fallen asleep both times. It's a rough experience.
It also didn't feel very Barkerish. The only thing it's funny. The only thing that felt Barkerish was there's a scene where Rawhead Rex pisses on a priest to grant him powers.
Yeah,
that
is what it is.
That's
I mean,
like the Barkerish thing in the movie. Other than that, it's basically just a monster running around, just mauling people. Not very convincing or menacing looking monster.
I mean, that movie led directly to Barker directing Hellraiser,
which is freaking amazing because I cannot say enough good things about Hellraiser. Honestly, I love that movie front to back, beginning to end. I initially saw it in a censored version, which made everything much more harrowing. Because it wasn't showing me the special effects. It just let me imagine them. Yeah.
There's a little bit of that energy between the theatrical and unrated cuts of Hellbound as well.
Yeah, even more so in Hellbound, honestly.
Yeah.
But I am genuinely impressed with how good. From my amateur perspective, how good of a director Barker was in Hellraiser.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, he had been a stage director for a long time, but up to that point, his only directorial efforts were, the rather famous short film Salome and the Forbidden. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Jenner's holding it
I
up.
have them in the.
Or not Jenner, Matt's holding it up.
I have them in the
Matt held that up.
So yes. But aside from that, it's extraordinarily confident for a first-time feature director. Just from the standpoint of the sheer volume of physical effects as well as optical effects in there. I mean, granted, it gets a little bit of shit for the the hand-drawn animations for some of the effects like Bucket, the Hell Priests, dissipation at the climax of the film. At this point, it lends it a charm that more technically proficient films may in fact lack at this point. It's one of those movies. It costs something like $900,000 or somewhere thereabouts, and every single freaking penny is on screen.
Yeah. And having finally read The Hellbound Heart, it was also I think a really good choice on his part, even though it was his book, to change Kirsty from a random friend of Rory / Larry to their daughter. I think that I didn't expect that going into the book, and it makes, because she's like a nothing character in the book.
A little bit.
She kind of shows up and saves the day, but it's like, why is she involved with these people?
In the movie, she is a righteous gizmo.
Yeah.
And a glorious engine for abuse.
Okay, now I know I'm opening Pandora's box here, but of course the second thing that Clive Barker directed was Nightbreed.
Not a fan.
What is your opinion of Nightbreed?
Yeah, not a fan. I am not a fan. I get its cult status.
I have a story about Nightbreed. Like when I was young, I used to play. I was terrified of horror movies growing up. I used to play chicken with horror movies using the last channel button on the remote. I would be watching like MTV or whatever, and if there's a horror movie on, I would go back to it and like try and like see how much I could watch before I got scared. I never usually saw anything bad because I would usually just get scared and jump away. Nightbreed happened to be on. I jumped over to it and saw this horrifying face, and then immediately jumped back and didn't go back to it the rest of the night. That was my memory of the movie. I recently, when the director's cut came out on Blu-ray a few years ago, I finally sat down and watched it. Turns out that was one of the good guys. He just had a weird-looking face.
Sort of the point of the movie,
yeah.
really.
I did find the movie a little long and a little bit boring. I don't have a strong opinion on it. I just saw it the one time. I own it on Blu-ray. I bought it, But
I am always kind of underwhelmed when I come to it. I will always give it credit for getting Cronenberg in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people, I think Jenner included, will praise the Cabal cut as being a restoration of brilliance. I don't see as much there.
It still
even
has,
when it's restored.
It still has some issues there. I mean, granted, when we start talking about the Cabal cut, the director's cut, 120 minutes, easy, it's done. They finally did it.
Mm-hmm.
There are multiple Cabal cuts in circulation. When I saw it at a Dragon Con a few years before the director's cut actually got released, I think it was something like a 135-minute running time. Subsequently, I've run across a 145-minute version, and bizarrely enough, they continued working on it after the director's cut was released, so the current standing quote-unquote ultimate Cabal cut is, you ready for this? 199 minutes long.
Holy shit.
Christmas.
I thought 2 hours was enough.
There is a 3 hour and 19-minute cut of that. I haven't had a chance to see it yet. That's a fairly major time commitment.
Jenner, do you have like a time device where you find these pockets of time where you can watch all these movies? I don't understand how you manage
No, I have many more long ass movies than I've had the ability to take advantage of. Notice that we haven't watched any Jacques Rivette for this program yet. Those start about 2 hours and 58 minutes long.
Was Cabal from the Books of Blood, or was that an actual novel? I've
Well,
not.
that's what Jenna was saying. It was supposed to be Books of Blood number 6. I think it is half of a Book of Blood.
Right. So
most of the Books of Blood are 5 or 6 stories.
So like a novella, and it's a 3.5-hour movie.
Yeah. The volume that is called Cabal is the novella Cabal plus several short stories. As I say, it was originally supposed to be Books of Blood 6, as I understand. Yeah. No, I like Nightbreed. I like it a lot. I like Danny Elfman's music. I love Cronenberg's performance. I think it's generally very well acted. The theatrical version definitely felt like it was missing a half an hour, lending itself to this whole cottage industry of varying attempts of restorations, including the official one. I still haven't actually seen the director's cut. I'm that fucking lazy, or at least I have that little fucking time.
There you go.
Yeah, but it was one of those films that always felt like it was missing something. So as the junkie for comparative videography that I was, particularly back in the VHS days, the hope of restoring something that had so obviously been mutilated and yet remained so interesting, it was definitely something that was kind of an inspiring possibility for me.
Has anybody else seen Midnight Meat Train?
Oh, yes.
Bradley Cooper in a role that will surprise you.
I kind of like that movie. I know it's from a Book of Blood story, I believe.
Yes.
I think it was on Amazon Prime. Yeah.
Okay, I have to say that for the longest time I was going to have a movie night which was called Unfortunately Named Movies, and it was going to be Midnight Meat Train and Man Thing, which I chickened out on because the original Man Thing movie is so goddamn boring. It is so boring.
Not the finest work of the director of The Lawnmower Man.
No. But yeah, Midnight Meat Train is, I mean, it's been expanded in all the right ways in that it tries to add character to the things that were just sort of ciphers in the original story.
Ted Raimi gets his head smashed in with a mallet. How can you not like that movie?
Yeah.
You got Vinnie Jones in there.
Yeah.
Vinnie Jones as the I was going to say titular
butcher?
killer, but that's not actually in the title. He's just the killer. Yeah, no, it's I don't know. I can see why it didn't really hit real big in the theaters. It's
Did it go to theaters?
Oh yeah. It was
yeah.
It was at the very least in the what's the art cinema in Atlanta?
Midtown Art?
No,
Plaza.
no, the Plaza.
Yeah.
I think it was in the Plaza.
Yeah.
We don't have your fancy art cinemas in Charlotte.
Man, it's
Well,
been so long. I don't
or
even know if we have them
Indianapolis.
anymore.
I first encountered it on video.
Yeah, me too.
I think I may have actually seen it at your place, Matt, before I actually picked it up on video for myself.
Oh, okay.
Bradley Cooper before he was anybody had ever heard of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I basically knew him from the failed Kitchen Confidential sitcom, which was actually not bad. Sort of, loosely based on Bourdain's memoir, but
I don't really remember where I first saw him.
Probably
Midnight Meat Train.
Wedding Crashers is where most people saw him first.
That's probably it. Yeah, that's probably the one.
I've never seen Wedding Crashers or
I
Kitchen Confidential. So in my case, yeah, it probably actually was Midnight Meat Train.
Same.
I'd like to talk about Candyman as well.
Hell yeah.
Because I love Candyman.
I didn't even know
to the
that
first two
was Barker.
Hellraisers, the best Clive Barker adaptation film.
Wow. I haven't Go ahead.
I've seen Candyman. I've read all that Barker. I found out this week while doing research for this segment that Candyman was based on Barker. I had no idea.
Huh.
I'd actually forgotten that. I have not seen Candyman in so many years. I remember really liking it, but I only remember a couple of moments from it. One in which the main character was crawling out of the hole in the wall that had been graffitied into a mouth.
Yeah.
And it was, that was a really good moment.
That was one of the signature images of the film.
Mm. That even made it into the new version.
Yeah.
Well, the image did.
I
like
think that was another movie I played chicken with when I was younger.
Yeah.
I did
It's
watch
a
it for real.
scary-ass movie.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the new one yet. I know it's been on Amazon Prime for a while now, almost since it came out.
I always really like the antagonist of a horror film to be somewhat like almost loving in what they're doing, like kind of passionate and it
You
has.
like to see someone who loves their work.
he's it's almost like he's polite to his victims. He's like, be my victim, and
Which is
it's all very, very romantic.
See,
in its
what you
murder.
just said.
Which, when you think about it, is a quality that he shares to some extent, particularly in the first two Hellraisers with
Pinhead.
Pinhead.
Yes,
the Hell Priest.
Yes, the Hell Priest. Yes.
I'm sorry. The way you just this phrased the Candyman line sounds like it should be written on a grade school Valentine.
Be my victim.
With a honeybee and a hook.
It's great.
But
something for some holiday-specific Walmart packaging.
yeah.
I even like some of the sequels, even though I know those aren't really Barker. I think the second one was Barker's story.
Barker had a story credit on Farewell to the Flesh.
That's the one. That's the one.
I thought was well shot, not least by the fact that it was an early directorial effort of freaking Bill Condon, who later did Gods and Monsters, also exec produced by Barker.
Great
amongst
movie.
other things. But I found that one to be very much more of the same. It left me seriously lukewarm when I first saw it in the theater. I still haven't seen the third one. I loved the recent new sequel. I didn't love it as much as the first one, but I did just adore it.
I thought it was very well done. I have a couple problems with it, but they're kind of elaborate, so I don't think we want to get into it at the moment.
Probably not the most pertinent for the conversation.
Yeah.
But
I thought it was fine.
yeah, no, I really liked it. But the original Candyman is an absolutely magisterial movie that, if anything, has gained sort of more cultural relevance in the meantime, as reflected to some extent and commented on in the new sequel as well. But at the time, I thought it was just extraordinary in that it spent so long in kind of its world building and its myth making. It's over an hour before the actual Candyman even shows up, I think.
Yeah.
And of course, Bernard Rose went on to become a fairly amazing director in his own right. I mean, he already was. If you've ever seen Paper House, which was an earlier film that he did, that's another one that definitely should be more well known. But
what was I going to say? The story on which Candyman is based. Barker did that was one of his earliest efforts in film, was doing a version of that story.
Very loosely.
Okay. I haven't seen the film, so I don't know.
The film is definitely an art piece. The story is much more sort of on the ground in, was it the slums of Liverpool? It was some British slum. But in any event, the movie kind of took the highlights of the story and kind of abstracted them from their context. But still a very arresting sort of visual art piece.
All right,
I guess.
Well, I think that's all the time we have for Barker. We're gonna continue on in the next half with the 2022, the newest version of Hellraiser. So we'll be right back. And we're back. Next up, we'll be discussing a, quote, reconfiguration of Hellraiser, not a remake, titled Hellraiser. Starring Jamie Clayton as the Hell Priest, colloquially Pinhead, although Barker hates the name. Yinka Olorunefe, I'm sorry, I am destroying that name, but Yinka Olorunefe as the Weeper. The Weeper was the one that had no jaw. The Cenobite with no jaw.
I thought that was the mother.
Selena,
we only see the mother in a
for
couple
like
of
1
shots.
second.
Yeah.
Selena Lowe as the Gasp. Jason Lyles as the Chatterer, who is my personal favorite. Zachary Hing as Asphyx, and Vuliskin Jovanovic as the Mask. Hellraiser 2022 tells the story of these and other Cenobites from the Order of the Gash, who want nothing more than to shower you with gifts of eternal sensation. There are also some dumbass humans that kind of fuck around. It was directed by David Bruckner. So, this was not on any of our piles. Or it was on all of our piles. It's new. We're breaking the format. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Call this episode H.
Yeah.
We're doing Hellraiser because it's Halloween and Hellraiser's great.
And we all wanted to see it anyway.
Yeah, we all wanted to see it anyway. The day it came out. So, so what did you all think of the new Hellraiser? First up, how familiar is everybody with David Bruckner?
Not.
Like I should be.
No. What has he directed? I didn't even look.
He directed one of the segments in the, I want to say, 2007 film The Signal, which was...
Oh, which one?
I think it was the middle one. I haven't actually...
the funny one.
I haven't actually seen The Signal. I've had a copy forever, but I still haven't seen it.
He did The Ritual, which I love.
Is that a Netflix movie? I think I saw that.
Yes,
I
he
did
did
see that. I did like that one.
Timothy or Rafe Spall.
Yes, I have seen that. I did like that.
That was fantastic. He did the Siren segment from the first VHS anthology. He did the accident segment from Southbound, which was another very
amazing
good anthology. Most recently, he did the Night House, which was one of the more interesting horror movies from last year, with an absolutely devastating performance by Rebecca Hall that in any just world would have gotten her an Oscar.
I hear he's very good and well respected as an up and coming horror director.
And he's a year younger than I am. God damn it.
So
also, actually, an amusing little incidental connection that I only just found out. Luke Piotrowski, who was one of the co-writers of the screenplay on this one, it turns out is an old high school friend of one of my very best friends in the world. She actually almost dated his sister once. He's
almost dated his sister once. Okay,
but was also a friend of hers from high school as well. So shout out to the local guy, I guess. Yeah,
all right, let's start talking about the movie now.
Yes.
What did everybody think? Who wants to go first? How about Wagner?
Oh, okay. Well, I think the first thing that needs to be said is that this is not a reimagining. It's not a retelling. It's just another sequel.
Yes.
They just don't want to say it's another sequel.
That was my thought exactly.
It is very, very well put together. It has a lot of budget. It has some neat ideas. It does some interesting expanding on the lore. There is nothing inherently wrong with that. All of the movies have expanded on the lore of the first one or first two, depending on how you're counting it. And we pick and choose what we like out of what they present. I went into the movie with a lot of trepidation, and I came out with it pretty damn impressed. And I liked, I think, just about all of it. I've seen it twice now, and I finished it 10 minutes before we started recording the second time. So I really rather liked it.
Shane?
Really rather liked it, I think, is actually... I'm sorry. Go ahead, Shane.
Did you want me to go next? I wasn't...
I don't care who goes next. We'll go with Jim.
Okay. I really liked it as well. I didn't love it. There is an elegant stateliness to its construction. I mean, aside from the fact that its main character is... the main character is interesting because she's a piece of shit, but she is trying desperately not to be a piece of shit. Which is sort of an interesting way to approach the character or the lead in something like this. But I thought it was supremely elegantly put together. It lacks the feral sexual dangerousness of particularly the earliest films in the series. To borrow your phrase, Matt, it doesn't feel unsafe the way that particularly the first two did. I
could see that.
Yeah. The elegance of its construction almost becomes a fault. That said, it is amazing to look at and listen to, I love the new Cenobites, particularly Jamie Clayton, who I think is just she's the one
She's the best thing about it.
She's the best thing about the movie. She's the one figure that kind of carries over the sensual aspect of the offerings of the Cenobites from, again, particularly the earlier movies.
Yeah, I mean, if we accept the fact... Go ahead, sorry.
Not to sound misogynistic, but I never thought that Pinhead could be so hot.
You need to talk to some people who were fans of Doug Bradley's version.
That's
also, we just read the novella where Pinhead has the voice of an excited teenage girl. It smells like vanilla.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Interesting contrast there. I think once we accept the fact that we just are not going to get another Doug Bradley again, because he's too old to do the role anymore, and if he did it anyway, it would be a sad imitation of the previous versions. If we want any more Hellraiser, it has to be someone else.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's a good choice.
And I find it encouraging that it looks like the deal with Hulu may have also included a prequel on the way in, although nothing has been announced yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Shane.
I thought it was okay. I reread the Hellbound Heart going back into it, and Nate touched on this a little bit, talking about Candyman, where the villain is like caring and passionate about what they do. Going back to the source material, the Cenobites aren't villainous. They made them villainous in the sequels because, once Pinhead entered the pantheon of like Mike Myers and Freddy Krueger, they had to make them villains. And so I wasn't expecting them to continue in that vein, which is what you said, Matt, where it feels like another one of the sequels, which is not what I was expecting. Have you ever gone to a movie or a book or something where you had a certain expectation, not of quality, but of where you thought things were going to go, and then went so far the other direction, by the time you readjusted and calibrated yourself to what you were seeing, it was almost too late? I kind of had that experience. I was like, this doesn't seem familiar at all. The box is not hungry in the
in the stories.
The Cenobites aren't out to capture victims. That's not what
they're waiting for people to come to them.
Yeah, you basically sign a contract with them, and then you have to fulfill that, and that's what the first movie is all about.
They're not trying to trick people into coming.
Right, they're not looking for victims,
and they really think they're giving like these amazing gifts to them. Yeah. They're like, "This is how we live. It's wonderful. Come join us."
Right, they're not hunting down people. So
no. Yeah. In the first two movies, they are not absolutely not the villains. In the first movie, the villains are Frank and Julia. Although Julia is also arguably the hero of the first movie, from a certain point of view. Julia is definitely the villain of the second movie, but also Dr. Chenard. The Cenobites are, to borrow the phrase from the credits of the Dr. Phibes movies, interested parties. They're just a particularly menacing collection of interested parties.
I feel
it's really
like
only the third one where Pinhead actually became a villain. But go ahead.
Yeah.
I'd like to tell you guys what I thought of it before.
Yes,
we get
please.
Go ahead.
Before we elaborate.
Yeah.
By the way, I did like parts of it though. I thought it looked good. I wish the Cenobites were more wet. Because they're like the appearance was like flayed flesh, but they just looked like they were wearing plastic suits. I don't know. I just wanted something a little bit more visceral. Although I did like the designs. Yeah. Anyways, but there were things I liked about it.
Good.
I also thought the movie was okay. I thought it had beautiful design, beautiful art direction, and just the most mediocre story they could possibly tell in the middle of it. And what I thought of as I watched the entire film was that first thing that happens to Frank in the novella, when he says, "I want what you can give me, Cenobites," and they say, "Okay," and they give it to him, and it's complete and total like sensation ramped up to 1,000,000. Like you can see down to a microscopic level. You can hear everything in the world simultaneously. You feel everything that touches you, and that sort of thing. And in the novella, it's really beautifully described in a way that I think could be incredible if put on film. I think that with today's effects and a creative director, you could get that level of creativity back into the Hellraiser series. This, on the other hand, was just it was mediocre. The story was boring. The characters were boring. I made a list of who would die when the movie started and named them in order once we had the full cast, and they fucking did.
Of course they did. Of course they did. I can completely see that. Honestly, a lot of what I was reacting to in liking it was the set design, was the character design of the creatures, was a lot of these little bits and pieces, and you're absolutely right in your estimation. I mean, if we look back at the entire series, I'm actually reminded of something from The Incredibles where the superhero is like, I feel like I'm just the maid. I just cleaned up this place. The Cenobites just show up for a pickup, and they're here to pick someone up, and the first movie is something went wrong because one of their charges got out and they didn't know about it, and that's where the story is, and that's why it's interesting. And then that's 1 and 2, and then 3, inexplicably, the Cenobites decide they want to conquer the world, and we get that ridiculous moment of them walking down the street blowing up cop cars. And
hilarious.
4 attempts to tell a prequel and a sequel at the same time of where this all goes, and then 5 and 6 are like typical pickups.
Yeah, 5 and 6 are 5 particularly was interesting at the time because it was the first one of the series that took place in the context of the undefeatable functional hell in which the series had always operated. It's a side story. It's its own little piece of stuff.
Well, it was a typical pickup. It was the trash people came and they picked up what they were supposed to pick up and they left with it.
Yeah.
And that is conceptually the core of it. And you're absolutely right. We come to the Cenobites in this one, and first of all, she solves the box but gets to send her brother instead. That makes absolutely no mechanical sense in the story.
Yeah.
It makes metaphorical sense because what do addicts do? Well, they injure the people around them.
Yeah.
And so I can see metaphorically how it makes sense, but plot-wise and with the Cenobites, no, you're absolutely right. It does not make sense. And then where it's going is kind of puzzling. I liked, and I kind of haven't sorted out the whole 6 configuration thing at the end, which I think is a really interesting take on it, an interesting direction to go, because you can't help but wonder what the other configurations are about.
I also think that they did it to make fun references to the lore.
Yeah.
That's
maybe.
Kind of how I feel.
To be able to say lament configuration.
That I don't. Jane particularly had a moment of, oh, come on. I liked it. I kind of liked.
It was like a say the title in the line situation.
Okay, a little bit. And what sites we have to show you at the very end. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it sort of broadens things a little bit, and there's room to tell different stories. I want to know what the hidden needle is in the resurrection granting. I want to know what the hidden needle is in the love configuration, which I can't remember the word they use for that.
I'm pretty sure they intimated that the resurrection is Frank. That's what happens.
God, I hope that isn't it. That would make sense, but that's kind of. Well,
I mean, recall the scene where she went down into the sex dungeon and was hugging her brother, but we see in the mirror, and it looks like flayed Frank from the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get the feeling that resurrection is not going to go well.
Yeah. No, I mean, they're all not going to go well. That's the essence of the series.
Yeah.
I kind of thought the liminal was a neat little idea. It was something new, not just getting torn apart forever. Although there's a lot of mechanics in there of like, so the other people solve the puzzle. They don't get to choose because they didn't make it all the way to level 6.
It's a very video game like.
Also, the mechanics of the box. Doesn't she at one point solve the box, but she basically dodges the needle?
She happens to be holding her hand in the wrong spot, and so then she gets away, but she doesn't.
So
she
what happens?
Pulls that off at least twice.
Yeah. So what happens if the box just doesn't prick the person who solves it? That seems like a
apparently
silly way
it kills your brother.
Yeah, it just takes whoever gets pricked.
Yeah. Well, it took the brother, and he wasn't even there.
No, he got
No, he-
pricked.
Oh, no,
got
he
pricked.
did get
He
pricked.
got
You're
pricked.
absolutely right. Sorry, I was
I
remembering
did think
the
her
dream sequence.
running after somebody to stab somebody with a box. Well, first of all, didn't somebody the lady who originally the high society lady from the beginning,
The
who
lawyer.
eventually gets stabbed in the back with the box. I thought her running around with a box stuck to her back was hilarious.
That reminded me of Gremlins 2, when you see all the chaos going on, and then there's a guy who runs in from camera left, and he has a gremlin just taped to his shoulder, and it's not moving or anything. And he's like, and it just does nothing. It looks exactly the same.
Well, to that point, I mean, one of the things that I did not actually like about some of the creature designs was the Chatterer, if you look, actually has a lament configuration embedded in the back of his head,
Oh.
which
didn't see
is
that.
what is pulling the skin back and forming the rictus grin. At least it looked like, okay, and this is the one thing I have to state, is the absolute worst thing about the film, bar none, is the fact that it is on Hulu, and if you pause the fucking movie to try and figure out what you're looking at, the screen immediately darkens and it pulls up the tools across the bottom of the screen so that you can't read what is on the paper, you can't look at the figures on the screen for a second longer so you can figure out what the hell you're looking at. That is enormously irritating.
That's the future of streaming.
I can tell
This
you
is why I will be buying this physical.
I can tell you what my least favorite shot of the movie is. So this mansion, I guess, was built to withstand the Cenobites or trap them or something like that.
Trap them. Yeah.
At one point, there's a shot outside of the courtyard, and the Cenobites are just milling around. Like, it's like when you've gotten through the fence and the zombies just kind of forget where you are and they just start milling around. These are Cenobites. Every time we see them capture someone, they're fucking Doctor Stranging the reality around whoever and coming in. Why are they milling around on the lawn like helplessly? I just hated that shot.
30 of them.
Yeah, they're all just standing out there.
Well, I mean, the whole thing
That's
is constructed some kind of Faraday cage.
Yeah.
I guess was the idea.
There's some reason
I just hated that shot.
I think as much as anything else, they figured that they would chill outside for a bit because sooner or later somebody would come looking for them. And of course, they were quite right in that regard.
I guess.
Yeah.
I did.
They sent the dumbest one in after her.
The weird little turn of the movie into siege picture in its last act, I think, is
that was
interesting. Straw dogs from hell. I don't know.
Yeah, but before siege, I was like, oh, now they're stranded in the woods. Really? This is a Cenobites in the woods movie now? I mean, that doesn't last too long, but then it goes from that to siege, and I'm like, huh.
I don't know. I did find the whole sequence with the van trying to get away from the estate, singularly arresting all the way through.
I really like that. I like that especially when we find out how they get to the girl in the back of the van anyway.
Yeah,
I thought that was
cool.
The visuals of the world transforming in little bits into hell are one of the highlights of the picture, I think. Especially some of the more elaborate ones inside buildings where it's like it's rotating away like parts of the puzzle. Which is, you get the feeling is absolutely the sort of thing that Barker would have loved to have done with the original movie if he had anywhere near the budget capable of pulling it off at the time.
Yeah. I have my own personal order of Hellraiser films that I like.
Okay.
And for me, it goes the first one, of course, followed by Inferno, the fifth one, and then the fourth one, and then the second one, and then the new one, and the rest can kind of do whatever they want.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
The thing about the second one is its first hour is, if anything, better than the first one. It goes a bit off the rails after Chenard gets Cenobited.
The second one is better in conception than it is in execution.
Yeah.
No, but
I like it. I'm not enamored with it like Jenner is, but I do like it, and the score is very good, of course.
The score is fucking majestic.
Yes.
I mean, I almost feel like I would have liked this movie better if it wasn't a Hellraiser movie. If it was just a evil box with some handlers.
I wouldn't have watched it.
That's true as well.
Is it bad for me to say that I would have liked this movie better if it was a Hellraiser movie?
Yes, because
I would have liked it better too.
We all have this ideal of what the best Hellraiser movie would be in our heads, and nobody's gotten to it yet. With the possible exception of the first one.
That's probably it.
I say the first one. Yeah. I love that movie. I think it's the perfect. It's unique in that the villains of the film are not the villains of the film.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally
the
unique
monsters
in the horror
are not the
genre
villains.
of the 80s. The monsters are not the villains. Yeah. The
they're
humans
still
are.
monsters. Yeah. They're still freaking terrifying and dangerous as fuck, but they are not the actual villains.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. All right. How's it? Anybody think the engineer made a showing?
I don't.
His hallway did.
His hallway did.
Yeah, the hallway definitely did.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was surprised they didn't make a reference to the engineer because they referenced so much of Hellraiser.
Yeah,
there was no Butterball either, right?
Yeah.
No. I didn't see a Butterball.
Butterball's
I mean, good lord, there's even non-Hellraiser Clive Barker references in it, like when at the climax is Voight is like in the flesh.
Mm-hmm.
Another Clive Barker book. Fun performance. I mean, a little bit on the nose, but fun performance by Goran. I'm not going to pronounce this correctly, but Vinich.
Yeah. I mean, he was
late of ER, just as the comically obvious rich guy heavy in the thing.
Yeah.
With the most sexless sex mansion, like all his sex scenes were like soft core porn. I felt like everybody had all their underwear on and stuff.
Well, I mean, again, that's the thing is the movie mutes the sexual aspects of the earlier material.
Well, it's interesting too.
Basically, the Cenobites show up, and they offer pain.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing but pain.
Yeah, they don't mention pleasure. They don't.
Yeah. Pleasure never even comes into it, or at least a little bit. Incidentally. I mean, the earlier movies were about blurring the line between pleasure and pain, and of course, going back to influence from S&M clubs,
which
where Barker had been hanging out, that was kind of in the order of things.
So they're basically gleefully hurting people in this movie, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no,
it makes sense in a dumbed down version of what we actually wanted.
Yeah, what we get in this movie, there's no crossover between pleasure and pain. It's just pain as a form of experience.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the other problem is that it's a pick-off film, and the ones picking off the characters are the Cenobites in this case. They have become the traditional monster.
Although I have to allow, what happened to Chatterer was freaking inspired.
Really?
I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean,
doesn't he just regenerate? Like, he's a Cenobite.
One would imagine.
Well, no idea, really.
Do Cenobites go to a Cenobite hell where everything feels great?
Yeah,
we really don't have any particular idea of what happens to people who go to hell in this thing. There appears to be people just getting ripped to shreds and then they're just freaking gone.
Well, I mean, the pulling apart of Chatterer just mirrors the pulling apart of Frank in the opening.
Yeah, I thought that was just a reference.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was cool. I thought it was cool that the box took him. I thought that was a cool idea.
Yeah, I thought that was, as a way to play that scene, I thought that was pretty inspired. Or the fact that the Hell Priest would allow it in the first place, like, it's a fair cop.
And then,
but then of course, it lends itself to a certain measure of idiot plot that they didn't repeat it later on because, no, who cares?
No, she was trying. She was trying to run around with a box stabbing a Cenobite with it. It just didn't come together, which I thought was hilarious that she was trying to do that.
It is kind of ridiculous.
This film had great design. It had a couple of great shots to it, some great performances that are not in the film enough.
The plot
I really hope it gets a 4K release on disc because the level the variation between absolute brightness and near dark detail in this movie is not a lot.
Yeah, this was a pretty dark movie. The first time I had to watch it with all the lights in the house off just so I could see everything.
HDR would help. A good HDR transfer would help this a lot, I think. But I still thought it was just amazing to look at, particularly in the climactic sequence.
How do we feel about the fact that all of these Cenobites are now nudists?
Well, I was saying like they should be more wet if they're like all
Right.
like
Well, and
ripped apart.
There
and
should be
stuff.
more separation.
well, it's just it's
There are a lot of
interesting.
vaginas.
Well, it's not even
Yeah.
that. It's just that, I mean, so much of the character design of the original Cenobites was based on the S&M clubs, was based on the leather culture that Clive Barker knew about and had seen. And
Right.
by taking that out entirely, is it still the same thing? I mean,
Yeah,
forget
This
the
is not
fact.
a recreation.
Yeah,
of-
I mean
Yeah.
they stripped out all the sex out of it.
Yeah.
I
That's
mean, all the
also-
pleasure, all
that's-
the S&M.
Right.
Now, granted, the whole leather thing is a lot less edgy now than it was in 1987.
Yeah. But still,
So-
I mean,
so
but
having
this is
people-
like
so
a
having people
watered
be-
down Hellraiser, and we're like decades later.
Yeah.
yeah.
It feels very soft to me.
Yeah.
It has no
It's-
bite to it.
It's elegant and stately and great to look at, and I liked it tremendously. I think it is probably my third favorite of the series.
I'm actually there with you, honestly. At ranking it at third.
Yeah.
Largely just on the aesthetics. I recognize the plot is dumb.
Yeah.
And
it,
that
it,
it's
it is a solid American, or at least American-ish, because I think it was mostly done in Serbia, rather like the
Mhm.
opening of this, the opening sequence. And good lord, where else are you going to find a quote-unquote abandoned mansion that looks anything like that?
Mm.
But no, it is a solid, stately American horror movie that happens to share some DNA with some of the most balls to the wall freakazoidal horror efforts of 35 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, share some DNA is probably the best way I would describe
Yeah, I mean,
how this relates to
it is
Hellraiser.
a high quality Hellraiser revisitation.
I am so used to at this point pulling out the bits and pieces I like from otherwise bad pieces of cinema that I have no problem saying that this is a movie I enjoyed because there were pieces in it I really liked.
Yeah.
But I can
I
recognize its flaws as well.
I did like it consistently. It's far from flawless, and it is, in comparison to its origins, like I say, it doesn't feel dangerous the way that it should. But just as a horror movie, I liked it tremendously.
I will say I thought there was one good speech in it when they caught the girl and the whole thing about the single unending note of heaven. I thought that was actually a fairly good moment in there.
Oh no!
When it pierced her sideways through the throat with the pin.
Yeah, Jamie Clayton's performance is the absolute highlight of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good choice for the Hell Priest, and I do hope there are more movies in the series with her as Pinhead.
And that hopefully take some more chances.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thematic chances, yeah.
Get a little kinkier. Get in
Now
there.
don't kill a baby.
Don't kill a baby.
Jeez.
That's
Don't
not,
let it
there's
get
a
out of
difference-
hand.
There's a difference between edgy and edgelordy.
Okay.
Yeah, just because there's a scene in Serbia doesn't mean you have to emulate a Serbian
yeah,
film.
Nate,
Yes,
Nate,
no.
stay away from the Hellraiser comics.
Oh jeez.
Well, there was that one Hellraiser, the one of the later movies where one of the characters kills a baby and a single mother.
Don't remember that bit.
I'm.
You could very well be right. I don't remember it though.
It's been a while for a lot of those sequels.
Yeah. I remember watching it, turning it off at that point, and I was like, I don't
That might have been 9.
continue with this. I think it wasn't Judgment. I know that.
Okay.
Yeah. Judgment has some serious wet work in it, but I don't think that was it.
No.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
one of them did that.
That one. Judgment actually
yeah,
got the urge to rise in my throat. So.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. I thought it was a fine movie.
all
Should have
right.
been juicier, in multiple senses of the word.
It's
wetter.
It should have been
Well,
harder.
yeah,
Moist.
Moister.
It wasn't.
Hey.
It wasn't scary, even by my standards. It wasn't very scary. It was just
No.
kind of like ticking off boxes. I mean,
It-
the first Hellraiser isn't really scary either. It's more of like horrifying ideas. And
I
I
would.
found the first Hellraiser pretty freaking scary.
I would say it
at
was
least at the
scary.
time.
Especially the moments with Frank in the attic. I think are genuinely scary at points in the first one. But I mean, mileage
But
may vary.
But even then, the first one, like this, was a lot more an exercise in atmosphere
Mhm.
than sort of direct shocks.
Mhm.
I mean, aside from shocks to the sensibilities as opposed to jump scares. There are not a lot of jump scares in this series. But the idea is that the totality of things is a frightening and dire cosmology.
Also, the writing and performance of an addict in this film is very
One note.
very much written by somebody who does not really know.
Yeah, that bugged me. The fact that the relapse is what kicks off the story, and then the relapse ends. That's not how relapses work.
Yeah.
When you relapse, that becomes all-consuming.
I mean,
she just
Yeah,
kinda
you don't
forgets
care
about
about the box at that point.
Yeah.
You throw that on the gutter.
points to Odessa Azion, I guess, for a solid performance with some very difficult wardrobe. And a thankless trope to play in the first place. I think it was a very good performance under the circumstances, but realistically, I wouldn't let her in my home.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that they decided to go that direction thematically with her as the focal point and the main character, because in theory you could do something with addiction versus the pleasure versus pain of the Cenobites. They kind of didn't. Other than the one metaphor I pointed out before.
Yeah. No, the idea of a Hellraiser movie being overtly about addiction is potent, but this isn't that movie.
Yeah.
They could have done something neat, and
It's used as a plot device.
it is.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Just to get the box out there.
Well,
basically.
I mean, I think there was a little bit more of that, as that was her defining characteristic. Even if it was badly done, that was the defining aspect of her character. But yeah,
what other defining aspects did she have?
she didn't.
Did she?
Awful wardrobe.
She loves her brother.
Hey, look, we can
What-
describe her without saying
Did they have
what she looks
parents?
like or what her job
no.
is. So
the well, I mean, the awful wardrobe I'm going to blame on wardrobe as
Mhm.
opposed to on the character or the actress, obviously.
That's about as two-dimensional as you can possibly get. That's like bad horror movie, two-dimensional. I didn't think any of these characters mattered. I did not have the slightest regard for them, so I wasn't afraid for them, and I didn't care when they got it.
I thought that they were very well acted, but generally rather underwritten.
no,
But I liked it
absolutely.
overall. Even though I like
It was fine.
ragging on it a little bit.
I mean, I would say watch it. It's on Hulu.
Oh, God.
If you have Hulu,
I mean,
Yeah.
I would.
check it out.
I could
You're
sit
a horror
down
fan.
if I wanted to. I could sit down and I could dissect this like point by point for hours and hours, and nobody wants to listen to that. Just
this is
because
one
I
of
like
those-
getting into the ephemera of this in particular. Hellraiser is pretty much my favorite horror franchise. Period. So mostly on the strength of the first, and to a much lesser degree the second film.
I'm telling you that fourth Hellraiser movie with that Cenobite dog and
Oh, what about the twins twisted together?
the twins twisted together. That was pretty cool.
I might need to watch them again.
had
I
a
don't remember any of
spaceship.
this.
It has a spaceship. It had a whole box spaceship. He was like, it's a trap.
Yes, I did. I
And
did
was-
like the final ending note of that film where he says it's all done with mirrors. I thought that was actually a good concluding line.
Somebody really needs, given that we're revisiting installments from ancient installments from horror franchises on the regular lately. Somebody really needs to go back and actually reassemble Kevin Yager's original cut of Hellraiser 4, because, good Lord, what do they have to lose at this point?
I recognize that that's probably a 3 out of 10, that movie.
Yeah,
But I just really like it. I
Okay.
really enjoy
That's
watching
fair.
it.
nothing wrong with that.
I mean,
I have
to some
no
extent,
explanation.
to some extent, I think I may have the same experience of this one. It's one of those things where I like it, and the reasons why I like it or the flaws that I find in it are something that I'm going to reverse engineer from there.
Yeah,
The fact remains that I enjoyed it tremendously watching it twice now, and want to see it again when it hits physical video, for fuck's sake.
yeah.
Please.
Which it never will. That's
Mm-hmm.
how things are heading these days. They just remove stuff.
I'm just going to point a camera at the TV.
Oh, because that's how that's done.
Yeah, that's how we have the live action Sailor Moon.
That's true. That is true.
Okay, that
God,
is true.
What a great bit of history that was. I would love that got released. It was amazing. Why aren't people making AMVs out of it?
I wouldn't know anymore.
There's not enough footage to do.
No, there
is the thing. All right. Well, does anybody have any final thoughts on Hellraiser or Clive Barker or anything having to do with this film or any of the others?
I mean, did Clive Barker have anything to do with this? It didn't feel like it.
He said he liked it.
He produced it.
Mm-hmm.
No, he was full producer.
Yeah,
he was a full
producer.
producer on this one.
Okay.
I just regard this as number 11. I mean, it's another sequel.
Yeah.
And then
that's
that
fair.
makes it all okay.
And I'm going to go with the best sequel since 2.
Really good Pinhead. Better Pinhead, I think, than the other one, the previous one, who I've never seen. I just heard those movies aren't good.
The one in Judgment was okay. The one in Revelations was awful.
Oh, there were 2 different ones.
Yeah.
Oh.
Which one was the one who was kind of chubby?
They were all... hell,
Doug Bradley was not chubby.
He got chubby.
By 7, he was frickin' chubby.
Yeah.
Well, that's age. That's an age thing. I mean,
Okay.
the guy who looked young and was a little
the-
chubby. Wasn't that Judgment?
That was Revelations.
That was Revelations.
No judgment on the individual, but that guy was a thick little bastard.
Okay.
I just found it so funny because it looked like they'd stuffed like the Pillsbury Doughboy into Pinhead's outfit. And
Pillsbury Pinhead.
Yeah, that was Revelations.
Okay.
I think that's the one that had the dead baby.
Yeah, the one from
that
Judgment
makes sense.
was not. You're right. I think you might be right. The whole found footage bullshit at the beginning.
Yeah.
No, Judgment was a lot better. Granted, an even lower budget, if such a thing can be imagined. But actually, I thought a pretty decent movie, especially coming as late in the cycle and as desultory as things had gotten.
They shouldn't have introduced angels. That's all I have to say. That's just a wrong-headed idea.
By the time you're on installment 10 and nobody cares, fuck it. There are going to be plenty of people who are going to say, "There's a Hellraiser 9?"
On that note, that's going to do
it. There was a Hellraiser 8?
Yeah.
There was, yeah. And there was a 7 and a 6 and a 5, and most people probably don't know about 5 and beyond.
Or 4, honestly.
Well, no, 4 got theatrically released.
Yeah.
Most people still don't know about it.
Very
Go
disappointing in the theater.
All right, let me end this show. That's going to do it for us here on What's on the Pile. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at What's on the Pile. You can find us on YouTube under the Punch Money YouTube channel. You can visit our website, whatsonthepile.com. Thanks for hanging out.